For decades, the galaxy had been torn apart by a war between two of the most advanced civilizations, the Zoltar Dominion and the Zin Empire. The Zoltar, masters of energy manipulation and automated fleets, faced off against the Zin, whose tactical AI systems had been fine-tuned for generations. Both sides were locked in a brutal stalemate. Battles were fought, planets laid waste, and entire systems reduced to barren battlefields, but neither side could gain an edge. The Galactic Council, a neutral entity overseeing interstellar diplomacy, grew increasingly frustrated. Despite countless peace talks and negotiations, the war continued to rage. The two empires had exhausted every technological advantage and were now playing a slow, destructive game of attrition. Peace was beginning to feel like a distant memory, with each side too proud or too fearful to give in. Within the Zoltar Dominion, military leadership was growing desperate. Resources were becoming scarce, morale was dwindling, and the public was growing restless. For the first time in centuries, there were whispers of unrest within the empire. The Zoltar had once been certain of their superiority, but now they faced the unsettling reality that their strategies were failing. In this moment of crisis, a Zoltar scientist, sifting through obscure reports from a distant sector, stumbled upon an overlooked species: humans. On the fringe of the galaxy, this relatively young species had developed rapidly, their technological progress accelerating at a rate unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Humanity, with its strange blend of primitive instinct and remarkable adaptability, suddenly seemed like a potential wildcard in the war. The Zoltar leadership debated the merits of enlisting this unknown species. Humanity had no established presence in the galaxy's power structure, and their capabilities were largely a mystery. But faced with the possibility of losing everything, the Zoltar decided they had little to lose. Humanity could either be a last hope or just another failed gamble in a war that had already cost them so much. A diplomatic envoy was sent to Earth, the humans' homeworld. When the Zoltar ship arrived, humanity's leaders were caught off guard. Earth had long suspected that other civilizations existed, but to have them appear on their doorstep was a shock. The Zoltar explained the situation, the endless war, the stalemate, and their desperate need for help. The humans listened carefully, intrigued but skeptical. Humanity's military leaders were not easily convinced. They had no interest in being drawn into a distant conflict. Earth was not without its own problems, and they had no intention of sacrificing their people for a cause that wasn't theirs. But as the Zoltar envoy explained the nature of the conflict, the humans began to see an opportunity. Their terms were simple. They wouldn't commit to a full-scale engagement. Instead, they would send a small, elite force as a test. If they could make an impact, they would consider further involvement. The Zoltar, desperate and without options, agreed to the terms. As the Zoltar prepared for humanity's deployment, there was still a lingering doubt. What could these newcomers really offer? Their technology, while impressive for such a young species, was still far behind that of the Zoltar, or Zin. Yet, there was something about the humans, an unpredictable, dangerous edge that the Zoltar couldn't quite understand. For now, all they could do was hope that humanity would be the catalyst they needed to finally end the war. The human strike force arrived quietly, far smaller in number than the Zoltar had anticipated. Veterans from Earth's most grueling conflicts, they came not with vast fleets or towering mechs, but with compact squads, each soldier a master of high-intensity combat. Their armor, though primitive by galactic standards, was designed for flexibility and raw durability. Exoskeletons enhanced their physical strength, and their weapons, though lacking the sophistication of energy-based arms, were built for close-quarters efficiency. They didn't rely on distance, they fought up close and personal. The Zoltar officers were stunned by the small scale of the force. In their mind, victory required overwhelming numbers, legions of soldiers and ships to crush the enemy. But the humans, unfazed by this assumption, were confident. Numbers, they said, weren't what won wars. Decisiveness, adaptability, and sheer ruthlessness did. These were soldiers hardened by a lifetime of conflict on their home planet, and they were well prepared for any battle, no matter the odds. As the humans deployed, the Zoltar commanders observed with growing doubt. The automated warfare systems they had relied on for so long seemed infinitely more advanced than the crude tactics humanity employed. The Xian barely registered the human presence, seeing the small force as nothing more than an insignificant threat, something their AI could handle without a second thought. But the humans didn't fight like the Zoltar or the Xin. They didn't follow predictable patterns or rely on extensive digital coordination. Their commanders gave orders quickly, and the soldiers moved with purpose, driven by an instinct for survival. The Zoltar soon noticed that the humans were willing to take on the most dangerous missions without hesitation, marching into zones their own soldiers had deemed too risky. They watched as the humans set up their positions in areas where their survival seemed impossible. Yet they pressed forward without an ounce of fear. The first engagement came swiftly. The humans set their sights on a fortified Xin outpost, a structure the Zoltar believed would take days, if not weeks, to breach. Yet the humans attacked without hesitation. Their tactics were unlike anything the Xin had faced. Where the Xin's AI-controlled soldiers relied on precision and strategy, the humans unleashed chaos. They moved rapidly, flanking positions in ways the Xin systems couldn't predict. Close combat was their forte, and they thrived in it, using the terrain to their advantage and driving the Xin into panic. Explosions rocked the battlefield as the humans broke through outer defenses. The Xin command structure, reliant on synchronized data, began to collapse as their communications were systematically dismantled. In less than an hour, the Xin defenses were in tatters. The AI struggled to adapt, unable to comprehend the humans' unpredictable movements and unrelenting aggression. Human forces had already breached the outpost's command center, dismantling it piece by piece. What the Xin thought would be a long, calculated battle became a rout. Their forces, accustomed to sterile, calculated warfare, had no answer to the raw, primal style of combat the humans excelled at. They faltered, retreating in disarray, as the humans pressed their advantage, refusing to give them time to regroup. What was expected to be a slow, grinding siege turned into a stunningly quick victory, with the human soldiers already preparing for the next objective. The human forces wasted no time pushing their offensive further into Xin territory. With every engagement, they unleashed a whirlwind of chaos. Explosives tore through carefully laid defenses, and their soldiers moved swiftly, using close-range weapons and guerrilla tactics to dismantle the Xin's strategic strongholds. The Xin, accustomed to a war of precision and calculation, found themselves outmatched by the relentless and unpredictable nature of human warfare. The Xin's AI systems, designed to adapt to methodical strategies, struggled to keep up. It couldn't anticipate the humans' sudden shifts, their willingness to push headlong into the most dangerous areas, or their disregard for the cautious approach the galaxy's species had long favored. As the Xin scrambled to recalibrate their defenses, the humans exploited every gap, tearing through their lines without pause. The Zoltar, who had spent decades grinding out a brutal war of attrition, watched in disbelief. These humans weren't here to wear the enemy down slowly. They fought for total and immediate domination. There was no waiting, no hesitation. They moved with a single purpose: to end the battle as quickly and as decisively as possible. For the Zoltar, it was a revelation. They had spent years locked in a slow, methodical war, but the humans showed them a new way to fight, one that sought victory in hours, not years. One of the greatest surprises the Xin faced was humanity's physical and psychological resilience. While human technology was inferior in many ways, their biology gave them a critical edge. They could take hits that would have incapacitated a Zoltar or Xin soldier and keep fighting. Their stamina seemed limitless, and even when wounded, they pushed forward, refusing to give the Xin any time to recover. This physical endurance, combined with their psychological toughness, proved devastating to the Xin's forces. But perhaps even more terrifying was the psychological warfare the humans waged. Battle cries echoed across the field, loud and primal, shaking the confidence of the Xin soldiers. The humans showed no fear, charging headlong into battle where others would have faltered. Their aggression was more than just a strategy, it was a weapon in itself. The Xin, who had built their society on strict order and control, found themselves unraveling under the relentless, chaotic assault. Their soldiers, accustomed to methodical, risk-averse tactics, were terrified by the sheer fearlessness of the human fighters. The result was a complete collapse in morale, with entire units falling into disarray. By the time the fifth hour of combat arrived, the Zin's once impenetrable defenses had crumbled. The human strike teams had broken through every major defensive line. Their command structure, usually so precise and efficient, was in complete disarray. AI systems, designed to coordinate the Zin's war effort, had been dismantled, and communication between units had become impossible. The Zin's forces, who had once seemed untouchable, now found themselves panicking. Some fled, retreating from the battlefield in a frenzy, while others simply surrendered, unable to comprehend how such a small force had utterly overwhelmed them. Back on the Zoltar command ship, there was silence. They had witnessed something unprecedented. Decades of war had yielded no clear victor, and yet in just 5 hours, humanity had accomplished the impossible. The Zoltar, who had been resigned to endless conflict, suddenly found themselves staring at victory, and it hadn't been their advanced weapons or their meticulous planning that had secured it. It had been a species they barely knew, one that fought with a mix of savagery and precision that the galaxy had never seen before. In just 5 hours, the balance of power in the galaxy had shifted. In the immediate aftermath of the battle, the Zoltar leadership stood on the precipice of a dilemma. Victory had finally been achieved, something they had barely dared hope for after decades of stalemate. Yet the manner in which it was won unsettled them deeply. Humanity had not merely defeated the Zen, they had dismantled them with a level of raw, unbridled aggression that the Zoltar found both awe-inspiring and terrifying. The implications of this were clear. Humans, while allies today, could easily become a threat tomorrow. The Zoltar Council convened to discuss the future of their relationship with humanity. On one hand, the humans had proven their value as an ally in the war, achieving in hours what the Zoltar could not in decades. But the question remained, was it wise to continue working with a species so unpredictable and so clearly willing to embrace total destruction in battle? Some argued for forging a stronger alliance with Earth, hoping to harness the humans' capabilities. Others, however, voiced their fears. A species capable of such ruthless efficiency might one day turn on them. For the Zen Empire, the shock of their defeat sent ripples of fear through their ranks. Once the dominant force in the galaxy, they had been brought to their knees in mere hours by an enemy they had barely considered a threat. The Zen had always believed their AI-driven strategies and technological superiority made them invincible. But humanity had exposed the weaknesses in their over-reliance on order and precision. Now the Zen found themselves retreating from other fronts, terrified of facing the humans again. The Zen leadership scrambled to reassess their position in the galaxy. The speed and brutality of their loss left them shaken, and for the first time they began to fear annihilation. Any thoughts of continuing the war were quickly discarded. Instead, they shifted their focus to defense, pulling back from contested territories and fortifying their strongholds, determined to avoid another confrontation with humanity at all costs. The once confident empire now trembled in the shadow of Earth's rising power. As news of the battle spread, the rest of the galaxy reacted with equal parts amazement and dread. Humanity, once dismissed as a minor species on the edge of the galaxy, had just reshaped the balance of power in a single stroke. Some species marveled at their tactical brilliance, impressed by the humans' ability to defeat the Zen so decisively. There were even whispers of admiration among some factions, who saw humanity as a force capable of disrupting the long-standing order of the galaxy. But alongside the admiration came fear. Many species, having witnessed the sheer destructive power the humans wielded, now viewed Earth as a volatile, dangerous entity. They had gone from being an afterthought to a potential threat almost overnight. The humans were no longer a species to be ignored. They were now one of the most feared forces in the galaxy. The Galactic Council, once indifferent to Earth's presence, now scrambled to establish diplomatic relations. The Council had always prided itself on maintaining balance and order, but the human victory had thrown that balance into chaos. Humanity was no longer a minor player. They were a significant new power, and the Council understood that they needed to negotiate with Earth directly if they were to maintain any semblance of control over the galactic order. On Earth, humanity itself was coming to terms with its newfound reputation. The soldiers who had fought in the battle knew the truth of their victory. It was not just their tactics or weapons that had won the day, but their willingness to fight with a level of intensity the galaxy had never seen. They had shocked their allies, terrified their enemies, and set a new standard for what war looked like in the stars. But with that victory came a sense of caution. Humanity understood that while they had earned that galaxy's respect, they had also earned its fear. They had made powerful enemies, and their place in the galaxy was far from secure. The humans were no strangers to the consequences of wielding power, and they knew that the galaxy would now watch them closely, waiting to see if they would become conquerors or something else entirely. As Earth's leaders met to discuss their next steps, they realized that the galaxy had changed forever. Their first major engagement had been a stunning success, but the road ahead would be uncertain. The humans had stepped into the galactic spotlight, and there would be no turning back.